Kids Comics Unite is a friendly, free community of children's graphic novel creators who are serious about improving their work and building their careers. This month, we're excited to highlight some of our members' crowdfunding campaigns as part of our partnership with crowdfunder.com. Our very own Patrick Lugo will be hosting these streams. Patrick, take it away!
There's always a delay. Let's see. There we are. And we're live. Welcome to the, we can call this the season finale for our Kids Comics Unite live stream spotlights.
And wow. Congratulations. Yay. Yay to everybody.
I know. Let's pause for applause. This has been, I'm looking at our stream right now, and this will be our ninth live stream since the first one we did, the live stream laissez-faire we did back in June.
Wow.
Yeah, so about an hour and 15 minutes each one. It's been fun. It's I've been calling it my summer dalliances, it's been a lot of fun. But welcome back, Janna. How are you?
I'm good. We're coming up on the end of the summer, so it's bittersweet.
Yeah, it is. But it's for me, I've been calling it hot and hectic. So it's got it's got some good and some bad. And look at this. We've already got a comment. We've got a few viewers here.
Oh wow! How do I figure out who the viewers are? See the viewers? I guess I can't.
No, that's something I have in the control panel. So unless you have a second window.
All right, please say hello in the comments so I see that you're here. I see Bob. Yay, Bob!
Hey, Bob. Yeah, we have. Look, I was just gonna say we have a half dozen people watching right now, but that number is clicking up. So, say hello in the comments. For those people who are just randomly appearing because they've caught my blog and stuff. Hi there. This is the last of our Kids Comics Unite live streams, right? So cheers.
Cheers. Clink.
Clink. And I figure what we can start with, Janna, is a quick little origin story of Kids Comics Unite. I know those of us who are familiar have heard it, but
you've heard it so many times, but I guess I should tell it again. I'll try to be fast. It started out as a meetup in a Lower East Side cafe, like tea shop that I think, Patrick, you would actually love. It's too bad you weren't there. You were on the other side of the country. It was December 2019. We had our first little meetup. We had a speaker. I think it was Matt Lux, and just 15 people or so hanging out, talking about comics. And then we had our second meetup in February of 2020. And then, beginning of March, lockdown. And I had found out about this platform, Mighty Networks. So I had started the meetup, sort of having this online community, which I called it Kids Comics Unite. I don't know, it just came to my head, and that's what I called it. I didn't even think about it for more than like 1 minute. So now I'm like, was that really a good name? I don't know. It's a little long, but people have trouble spelling it. But anyway, that's what it is. And it's been growing ever since then. And now we do workshops, we do live events that are free and that are paid and bring people together. And the whole goal is to lift up the community of kids and young adult graphic novel creators.
Indeed. And we've got a bunch of comments. So let's run through them. Hey, Jeff. Jeff thinks it's a good name. Desi says, hi, everyone.
Yay. Oh, I'm so glad that people are here who actually participated in the crowdfunder.
Oh, it is, the list is growing. Ashley and Jeff, hi, Patrick and Janna. We've got Roger McMullen swinging in with the cheers.
Is Roger here? Roger asked a lot of really good questions, which we're going to cover today, right?
Yes, indeed. So remind us in the chat, we have a pink hand waving We have Bob ready to crack open a beer, which is fantastic. I endorse that activity. You know, shout out to Big Fab Story Lab, Sarah, who was key in that opening sequence that we played and has been a mover and shaker behind the scenes for a lot of what's happening.
Sarah is beyond amazing. When I see that intro, our little video, I just feel like, oh, it's so amazing.
I know it sets the tone perfectly for each one
Yeah,
of these.
yeah. So shout out to Sarah.
Yeah, in fact, here I have something special just because, for that shout out. So give me 1 second, Janna. I'm pressing a bunch of buttons all at once. But here's a little something for Sarah. Thanks.
And actually, shout out to John St. Amant, who designed the character.
That's true. And
And Jade
here's
Vaughn, who basically took the characters and turned it into our whole website, brand, etc.
Yeah, our kids comics universe. I'm having a hard time seeing you with all of this fur, but
I'm hiding.
let me put that away because I could just, like I said, I get in trouble sometimes with these because I start pressing buttons and then there's lag time and things
I'm
get.
glad you're the one who's pushing all the buttons.
Oh, I've mentioned it before that when I'm co-hosting with one of my other shows, we have this habit of pressing the same button at exactly the same time. So we're queuing up a cool thing and we think, okay, the banner is gonna hit just then, and then it doesn't because we turned it on and off at the same time. So, live streaming. So here we have Rowena, who we also know as Marie, who knocked it out of the ballpark with her
Marie,
own
way to
campaign.
go. Ooh, Desi's on her lunch break, so maybe we should get into the nitty gritty.
Yeah, totally. We have a lot to cover. And more. Look at we have a growing part, and the cool thing is that we have some guests from other networks beyond the Kids Comics Unite universe. But here, look, we've got Roger enjoying the backstory. Hey there, Greg. He's a member of Comics Connection, one of the other comics-oriented communities that do
Is that
similar.
with Kamal Hennessy?
It is. It is
Okay.
Kamal Hennessy's program, which personally I think is a great counterpoint to what we do at KCU. The two together are like yin and yang.
Yeah.
So it's great to see some of those folks stopping by. And yes, Big Fab Story Lab. I love a good. It's not really an alliteration, but it rhymes. So yeah. And okay, so look, we could just keep. I could just keep pressing these buttons.
You do like pressing buttons.
And reading that, but let's stay on track. So we've covered the secret origin of KCU for those few who don't know. And so let's cover why and how we ended up doing these live streams, right? Because
maybe should I talk about how I first got connected with Crowdfunder?
Yeah, that would be a great way to add some context. So let's do that.
So it actually happened last September at SPX. I went to SPX's the Small Press Expo in Bethesda, Maryland. That's really amazing indie comics show. It's probably my favorite indie comics show in the United States. And I was just going to some panels, and there was a panel about crowdfunding, and it was co-hosted by Crowdfunder and a comics creator, and I can't remember his name at the moment. But at any rate, it really blew me away because Crowdfunder is a small independent startup that is a little different than Kickstarter. And Kickstarter, is the 800-ton gorilla in crowdfunding, and comics are super, super successful on Kickstarter. So there is kind of the question of why would you even use another platform? So I think maybe, Patrick, you can go into some details about why or in what aspects Crowdfunder does compete with Kickstarter, how they have certain features that are maybe different or not possible on Kickstarter. But at any rate, they seem like really good people. So after the panel, I went up and introduced myself to I guess he's the president of Crowdfunder, and just chatted a little bit, exchanged information, and then I followed up with him and then invited him to come and do a little lunch and learn, I believe, about crowdfunding for Kids Comic Studio. And then after that, we were chatting, and he just told me, well, we're thinking about doing a kids focus event this summer. And when he told me this, it was sometime in the spring of this year, and we didn't have a lot of time. So when he told me, like, yeah, in 1 month or something like that, I just was like, no, not again, because so many times we do things. This is our pattern at Kids Comics Unite. We get a good idea and we just jump on top of it, even if there is no time at all, which is not ideal. But once again, I was just like, oh my gosh, we can't let this opportunity go by, but let's just give it a try. Because that is sort of my philosophy. If a good idea comes your way, even if maybe the timing is not perfect, but you really love the people, go with your enthusiasm. So that's what we did. And then
Truly.
Patrick, you are the one who really took it on. I mean, I knew that I didn't quite have the bandwidth, and I knew you were the perfect person to really take it and run with it. And so maybe I should pass the mic over to you now, and you tell everybody like where things went from the point where I was like, Patrick, can you partner with Crowdfunder? And
Yeah, you call the king of zero margins, right? So I think I have some randomly scrawled notes, and so when we initially started talking, we were thinking of like May, right? So I think the whole conversation started in August, and they were initially saying we
April,
were
you mean?
gonna, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you're right. My dates are messed up. So anyway, so we started talking around May, thinking that the spotlight was going to happen in June. And then they said, no, we'll do the spotlight in July. And that gave us that little bit of a hair's width to work with, right? So we set up, you asked me to develop a couple of curriculums, right? We started with the workshop, and that, I kind of framed that as like the 5 key things. Like, we have this narrow window of time, and I kept looking at these calendars of how much time would we have to do something to be able to like start from zero and build a campaign, that would start in July 1st, right? So I think we had about 8 weeks to work with, and we very quickly set up a Saturday workshop, and then we decided to springboard that off into what we ended up calling the crowdfunding crucible, right? A 6-week program designed specifically to just like boil away what's unimportant and just get people to focus exactly on, what was needed to be done to get from zero to launch in 6 weeks, 0 to 60 in 6 weeks, something like that. I don't know. I'm always working on those taglines. But yeah, we have a question relevant to that. Bob asked, did everyone reach their goals? We should support those who gave it a good effort. Agreed 100%. So when I last checked, everyone's reached their goals.
Wow.
Hooray.
Oh my God. That is amazing. Everyone, 100%? Yes.
I'll have someone out there can check my facts, but I believe so. So here's the thing that's interesting to answer your question about the difference between crowdfunder, the platform, and Kickstarter, right? One of the key differences is the take it or leave it approach that Kickstarter has, right? All or nothing. You either get exactly what your goal is or surpass it, or you get nothing at all, right? That's something that crowdfunder offers. Yay, congrats to everyone. Crowdfunder offers something different, right? They offer a few alternatives to that. You can do a all or nothing campaign, or you can do like a keep it all campaign. So when I say like they've all succeeded, right? There's the caveat that some people, really use the spotlight to build an online store. So rather than like approaching the project with the sense of I need a specific amount of money to achieve a
Mhm.
specific result. Some
Mhm.
people approached it more along the lines of, here's my body of work. If you like stuff that you're seeing in the spotlight, order a book, right?
Mhm.
So one of the differences, I mean, one of the things I like to compare crowdfunder with is Etsy, right? Where you
Mhm.
can kind of create it as an online store. And
Mhm.
so I'm not the only one who had a campaign that included not just the book I was crowdfunding, but other books that I've worked on and made those available. And the king of doing that was our friend Lex Fajardo, who already had a book in the works and just decided to quickly switch from Kickstarter to crowdfunder because the timing was exact.
Mhm.
And it's all, it was the fourth in his
Mhm.
book, his Kid Beowulf series. So it just like seamlessly just went forward. And then he was able to make another thing that crowdfunder is really cool at that differentiates itself from Kickstarter is how customizable it is. So Lex was a great example of making his campaign page look exactly like the rest of his online brand, like
Oh, wow, that's great.
his web page, his Patreon page, everything. So it all looked seamless.
Wow.
So
Can everybody who is here live, who is involved, put the link to your crowdfunder campaign in the chat? That would be so great.
yeah, I think I know I recognize a few of our crowdfunder friends here. So yeah, put your campaign links in the chat and I'll pop them up there. But in the meantime, we mentioned crowdfunding Crucible, so I wanted to share a little bit about that, right? Because that was the special thing. Most of those members were first time crowdfunding
Yeah.
it was their first time campaigning. The
Yeah.
one exception, being myself and
Mhm.
then Lex Fajardo, who
Mhm.
I consider a member because he was key in helping develop the class.
Mhm.
I kind of once again crowdfunder does that. They're so hands-on in helping develop a
Mhm.
campaign. So basically I sent Lex ahead of everyone else to work with them and just basically kick the tires and figure out how to
Mhm.
build a page
Mhm.
so that I could then point everyone else to his page and say, look,
Mhm.
do it like that. And
Super
but
smart.
so what you have here, right? So this was a
Mhm.
blog post I put on my own little
Mhm.
website, just to kind of keep folks
Mhm.
up to date. It's one of the things I like to do, right?
Mhm.
Is try and maintain some regular blogging. But so these were the four campaigns that were a part of the summer spotlight that were from the Crucible.
Wow.
So I'm gonna I can't see this on this preview screen, so I'll look at it from another screen. But
Mhm.
what you have here, top left, you have
Mhm.
Kid Beowulf songs and sagas, right? They raised almost $3,000, right?
Mhm.
And they're 52 days in. Their campaign closed, but once again, they can still keep their page running.
Mhm.
So then next to them, we have The Adventures of Nikki and Ricky, Baffling Birds, comics for young naturalists, right? This is like the star pupil of the crowdfunding
Mhm.
crucible, right? The team of Marie Ventura and Sarah Steinberg, who worked together to like create a newsletter, get subscribers, pump that newsletter out like every other week almost
Mhm.
in the lead up to their campaign. And they funded in the first day. It was amazing.
Wow, that is just amazing.
And I have videos for both of these two campaigns, so I'll share those
Mhm.
momentarily. But yeah, so they reached a bunch of stretch goals. I think one of their last stretch goals was financing a trip to Comic-Con to promote the book.
Uh-huh.
So that's very impressive.
Mhm.
Recently concluded, like just maybe a day ago, is 3B Honey by the
Mhm.
Desi and John Saint Amant, another blockbuster campaign, right? They raised nearly 5K.
Wow.
So that's that's a pretty special story in and of itself.
Mhm.
And then also, right, they were kind of an inspiration for what we started to do. Well, I want to ask you about your evolving opinions on such things as getting published, you being a
Oh
literary
gosh.
agent, and
Oh,
then
that's a big
self-publishing.
topic.
I'll give you some time to formulate an answer because it's a three-part question, right? Getting published, the literary agent point of view, self-publishing, and crowdfunding. So, but
Okay.
before we get to that question, and Janna, this is me following notes. Can you imagine if I did this improvised? And lastly, we have Making Ever After, a story on little mouse feet, which was I like to call a stealth campaign by Carolyn Conahan, who really quietly did like put this book together and put it out there, but was a little bit shy about really stepping out and doing a live stream. Although her campaign video is really delightful, so I'd recommend folks popping over to that campaign to have a look. And then the last campaign that's still running, let me swap this screen share with a different screen share for the one KCU crowdfunding campaign that has about 30 hours. I was going to say 30 days, 30 hours left. So here it is. It's my campaign, Lucivilos, High Flying Princess, which was also funded.
Oh, there we go.
Lag time. See, I press buttons and I get in trouble. But so this is my campaign, which another interesting thing that crowdfunder allows a campaign to do is extend their deadline. So this campaign was extended a week while it was at like the 80% mark. And the interesting thing is on the day that it was extended, it also jumped to 99%. Like that one day, that day that I announced, oh, we've got 7 more days, was just enough to tip it to 99%, which gave me 6 more days to get to a whopping 103%. So, fun, a little hectic, right? I was getting a little bit worried there, hovering at that just under success percentage, because I mentioned this, right? There's that game of like whether you get attached to the end result or whether you get attached to the experiment, right? Or the result of the experiment. If I stayed attached to the result of the experiment, then I'd be looking at this as like valuable information, regardless of whether the campaign succeeded. But it's hard not to want the campaign to succeed as well, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
But I feel like I've been doing a lot of talking.
Well, I would love to ask you some questions, and I know that people here in the chat probably might have questions too. So please, if you got questions, jump right in. But I know Roger had some really good questions, and we need to probably do a survey to get actual data to answer some of his questions. But maybe Patrick, you could talk about what you know, or even just from your own experience. He was asking about how people. Well, I think the way Roger framed it was how did the campaigners find people to advertise to? And I thought the word he used, advertise, was kind of interesting. Because I think the way I would have said it is maybe like, how did you find out people to do outreach to? So you could maybe talk a little bit about the difference between outreach versus advertising. And then the other question he had was related to like tiers, but let's get into that later. So let's talk first about how do you find people to like support your campaign?
That is the riddle, right? That's the riddle that every one of these campaigns had to answer, you know. And I mean, I think it really had to do with knowing your audience, right? In a word, right, or in a phrase. During the crowdfunding crucible, I wish I had that graphic handy. I'm not gonna look for it because that'd be terrible broadcasting, right? But I had created a graphic that was like a thermometer that kind of categorized like potential your audience according to temperature, right? And at the
Mhm.
very top, the hottest audience members was your friends and family,
Mhm.
right? And then those people, and then what I called your proponents, those people
Mhm.
who are the most passionate about what you do, so much so that they're willing to champion
Mhm.
that work in some way. And that could mean social media, that could mean introductions. Hey, I know somebody, I'm going to introduce you to this
Mhm.
librarian or something.
Mhm.
So like those I marked off as like at the top of your thermometer, right? Those are the hottest contacts. So
Mhm.
start with that. And I mean, that's something that I learned from you in terms of like building a newsletter, and how the best way to build a newsletter is to start with the people that you email regularly.
Mhm.
And so that I put, maybe not red, but maybe orange on the
Mhm.
thermometer, right? So these were the people that you've actually, ideally you've spent time making the effort to go contact them, add them to your email list so that they can start getting information about what you're planning to do. Within the context of the Crucible, that was maybe a 5 week window people had to
Mhm.
like put together a newsletter platform, and
Mhm.
then start the outreach of gathering those email addresses, and then having something, right? Having something that they could talk about. So once again, in the Crucible, we built what I called a countdown calendar. I wanted to make it hourglass shaped, but I couldn't really, you know, design it that way effectively. But it's basically like a 60-day calendar with, those days in the middle being like extra large, emphasized. The
Mhm.
idea being that you're going from, 30 days until the day of your launch, and you mark down what you
Mhm.
want to do on a weekly basis or on a daily basis over the course of those 30 days. And then you have your launch day, right? So then there's like lots of activity over the course of those 48 hours. And then there's the 30 days of the campaign, right? And so the
Mhm.
idea was to like look at that launch date and try and build like an inverted pyramid of more
Mhm.
and more concentrated interest, more
Mhm.
stuff to talk about, graphics, etc. And then to use your newsletter and your friends and family to target that stuff with. But
Mhm.
then after that came like the cooler members of your audience, which would be people that are just like have similar interests. Well, look, we
Mhm.
have one of our star students has something to say. Our email newsletter subscribers, colleagues, friends, and family were the strongest supporters, Desi
Mhm.
says. She also says everything they included in packages, rewards as something that could be shipped in a flat package with the book to mitigate additional shipment. Okay, we'll get to the technical side of
Mhm.
that later. But in terms of audience, um, once you get past like the warmth of the newsletter, then it gets cooler, right? It becomes more like affiliate groups, co-workers, members of clubs that you belong to, whether it's the gym or like a
Mhm.
tea drinking society, or
Mhm. Mhm.
the PTA. So
Mhm.
those are the people who, they're not necessarily warm, they're not necessarily interested in what you're doing on a regular
Mhm.
basis, but they might find your decision to do this project infectious, right? They might
Mhm.
get that enthusiasm and be like, oh, let me try this out. This might be something my kid's interested in.
Mhm.
So that would be like the warm um, to
Yeah.
cool temperature. And then it goes to like social media, which is pretty much cool. Like I put Facebook groups in there. That's like a weird little
Mhm.
category because
Mhm.
who uses Facebook anymore?
There are
But
some people.
yeah, truly, there are a lot of my own audience is on Facebook, and I'm
Mhm.
constantly trying to peel them away. But
Another topic, another rabbit hole not to go
oh, I know, I know. I wish I had a rabbit graphic for this one, but
down.
no more pressing of buttons just yet. So then the coolest and coldest would be social media, and then the press, right? Like
Mhm.
even though I got lucky and was able to appear on a few podcasts. I had lined up some podcasters for other members of the Crucible to try to get on and participate in. So there was some primed opportunities that way. But even still, like in terms of planning, don't plan to get much results
Mhm.
from appearing on a podcast, like
Mhm.
the appearance on a podcast works better for like having something to talk about, to include in your newsletter and to
Mhm.
include in your updates for those people who are in the warmer part of your audience
Mhm.
temperature. But there's not going to be a lot of conversion on that front.
Yeah.
So, how was that for an answer?
I think
Long and
it's yeah,
rambling?
that's a really great answer, although, Roger, if you're here in the chat, I would love to know if you have any follow-up questions, like if that answered your question about how people found an audience to talk to about their project. The analogy that I like to make a lot is that I think people feel like when they do something, they take a big step like doing a crowdfunding campaign or self-publishing a book, that they have to have a stadium of people out there that they can have a megaphone and broadcast their message to. Whereas I think you're much more likely to have success if you imagine yourself in a jazz club and you're just talking to the people that are really close to you right by the stage, that already know you, and they're there because they already love you and they want to be in this little space with you.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'd love a jazz club. Been to a few. But here's a comment. Bonnie says she much prefer Facebook for real connections. Not sure how to media outreach and other social media to satisfy the level of feeling. Um, it's true. Like compared to just sending out a dry, like cold press
Mhm.
release, right? Reaching out
Mhm.
to a Facebook group and posting there, um, would work better, right? But
I think that maybe Bonnie is hitting on something important because she said, I prefer Facebook for real connections, which implies that Bonnie has real connections on Facebook and she has, warm engagements there, which, if that's the case for you, then that's great. Wherever it is that you have a sense of real connections with people and that you enjoy and, brings energy into you, that's what the path that you should go down. And so, Patrick, for you and me, that wouldn't be Facebook. But if you are a Facebook person, then you should embrace it for all it's worth. So it's really a question of yourself and the people that you're connected to. Where do you find those people? And then, Roger, I see he's got some follow-ups now in the chat here.
he does. Let's see. So he says, kind of. I know in the past I've had to think about who would be interested in this. And then I've targeted Facebook groups of people who like those things. He goes on to say, so similar interests, etc. Not just I know this person and they do good things. What's really kind of interesting is that John and Desi Saint Amant actually gave Roger a shout out for giving good advice on the question he's asking, right? He
Mm,
suggested to them that they reach out to groups that were oriented toward like beekeeper societies
mm,
and other like, insect oriented groups. Since both of those projects were insect
mhm,
oriented, I was encouraging them to have a
mhm,
crossover at some point.
mhm,
But, like Roger's suggestion that the Amants reach out to people who are interested in bees outside of comics, right, was the same kind of advice that we're offering. Like, find the
mhm.
people who have those parallel interests.
You know what would be super cool, Patrick, is if
Mhm.
everybody who did a crowdfunder campaign this summer went through your list of all the people who supported you and literally categorize them by who they are, like a family member, a close friend, a coworker, or not a stranger connected through a Facebook group or something like that. And then, like, we could compile all the data and see like which groups ended up offering the most support. um I've done this kind of uh analysis, like quantitative analysis, before, when people have asked me as an agent, how do I find clients? And it's really interesting because I think it's not what people think. I think people think, it's your query inbox, but that's such a tiny percentage of where agents find clients. So yeah, I think the same thing with crowdfunding. People think like, oh, it must be, you find this group that's absolutely interested in the topic that you're writing about. But my gut instinct is that most likely most of your support comes from people who you know well and interact with on a regular basis. But I don't know, Patrick. I might be wrong. We'd
I
have
mean,
to.
that's been a lot of my experience on a personal level. Um, and I think there's a thing of like that mutual, okay, like personal story, right? Tiger's Tail up there, Kung martial arts themed comic. So I reached out very much to the martial arts community, which I'm a part of. And a good portion of the enthusiasm was the cachet, right? All the years that I had put into helping lift up that community, kind of coming back.
Mhm,
And then there was like another layer of people who got very interested specifically in the project because of literacy,
mhm,
because they're also comic fans or they
mhm,
remember comics when they were kids, or because they have aspirations to write a children's book or something else. And they're like, they love the idea that there's someone else they can
mhm,
model their efforts
mhm,
after, right? So,
mhm.
so I think, and then, okay, so here's an interesting bit of advice that I've been given by my own crowdfunding mentors, right? And they describe, I want to create an infographic that to help illustrate it. But he described how during your first campaign, your initial campaigns are usually going to be supported by those really warm relationships, right? Your friends and
Mhm,
families and
mhm.
your close fans. But and but over time, as you do more and more campaigns, those people will drop off, right? Because they will
Yes.
have already bought the books,
Mhm,
they will, move on to other things. They
mhm,
like they wanted to support the initial effort, but they're
mhm,
not necessarily active readers.
mhm,
But ideally, those people will be replaced by people who
mhm.
are active
Yeah,
readers, who are interested in that specific work. They like talking animals or
yeah.
martial arts or,
Mhm.
talking insects.
Yeah, 100%. It's such an evolving thing. It's not gonna be, where you are when you're just starting out and what's gonna work for you is different than once you are very well established.
Agreed. And Roger's got a few more comments that I'll share.
Mhm,
Right. So he recognizes the spam technique isn't often fruitful, and he thinks Desi and John can attest to that. He goes on to say, I think you're right, but I guess the question is, how do you expand it beyond your small circle? I mean, that is the question. People associate um crowdfunding like a convention these days. I've seen that
mhm,
similarly a couple of times, right? And this is where Kickstarter, is the 800-pound gorilla. It's like
mhm,
Comic-Con, right? Like if you go to Comic-Con, you're still going to be more likely to see people there's like a larger pool of people to draw from that might be interested in your particular project, as opposed to going to a smaller
mhm,
platform, right? But
mhm,
if that platform is specific to, insects or martial arts, right,
mhm,
then there'll be a higher percentage. It's like a weird percentage game, I think.
mhm.
Let's see. Desi says, your gut is right, Janna. The organizations and groups weren't responding to our outreach efforts, but I think it was because it was an afterthought. And we didn't take the time to build the relationships with them, right? So once again, well, you know, the runway, right? I think that there's a direct correlation with runway to hype.
Absolutely. Yeah, and Patrick, you hinted at that when you said that you got a lot of support from the kung fu community because you already had been within that community for years and were well known and.
Right. Whereas my most recent campaign had like basically like a week worth of runway, right? Like I springboarded off of the Crucible and launched a campaign, kept my expectations very small because I
Mhm,
knew I had a short runway.
mhm,
But still, it's that balancing act. I got 103%, so I guess my estimate must have been pretty accurate, right?
mhm, mhm.
Here's a question from another Comics Connection member who's joined us. Chris Magnus Art asked, doesn't the notion of knowing what the genre of your project is set the baseline of where or who your audience is, or like the idea of how people would do one line pitches in Hollywood. Doesn't the
That is
notion?
yeah, that's interesting. I think that this sort of also goes back to your question, Patrick, when you said you wanted to talk to me about getting published, I guess, traditionally via an agent versus self-publishing and crowdfunding. And I think, publishers, the way they think about marketing a book, yes, is definitely what's the genre, where's the audience of people who would be interested in this genre, and how can we promote it out there. But that's a very um uh how should I say it? It's not a personalized way to get support. And I think just because of the media environment that we're in these days, how much things have changed, that in the very beginning, personal support is so important. And it's just not as effective as it used to be to just say, "Oh, you're a mystery reader. You're going to love this mystery." People, I mean, if you just think about how you as a consumer behave, usually you want to get a recommendation from somebody you know who knows you and they know your taste, because the world of mysteries is so big. There's some mysteries that maybe you love, but then there's other mysteries that you absolutely hate. So just knowing like a sort of generalized genre isn't enough, I think. I don't know. Am I making sense here?
I think so. And Chris goes on with a follow-up comment saying, my story is like the Matrix meets Pee-wee's Playhouse, to sort of liking your work to something that people know and have an interest in, right? So that's what we've called like the log
Mhm,
line,
mhm,
or I've been hearing it called your convention pitch, right?
mhm.
Where how can you quickly convey to someone across the table what's your comic about while you're showing them the cover?
Yeah. Well, being able to boil down your story and convey it in an elevator pitch is extremely important. That's something you'd want to be able to do on your crowdfunding page, so that when somebody comes to your crowdfunding page, you have something right up at the top there like, "Oh, okay, I understand what the story is. I understand who the audience is." That's one thing, but that's very different from making a connection with somebody to the point where they're willing to pay money to support you. I think does that make sense?
I mean, I think maybe let me know if I'm using this term correctly. They're not mutually exclusive, right? Like,
Mhm.
all of what Chris is saying in terms of like understanding the audience, understanding who would be interested is useful, and still most useful for those people who already are invested in the creator, right? For that initial
Mhm.
launch, right? Like that initial building of one's audience. We have so many more comments. Our recent conversation has exploded in the comments, which has been delightful. So let's find a few more. Desi says she did find some advocates and librarians and her creative director at the ad agency she works at. They spread the word and got people on board.
So that
So
goes to what you said about proponents.
yes, exactly. And then the idea is like, how can you cultivate and maintain that relationship beyond just the initial like interest?
Mhm.
So to dovetail with that one, Verena said this. They also reached out to lots of groups and organization and even did some live events, but most of their support came from family and friends, critique group members, and so on. Right? Some like the chance that they
Mhm.
offered to be characters in the comic, right? One of the unique things about crowdfunding is that like that ability to like pull people,
Mhm.
literally bring people into the project, right? Do you want
Yeah,
to pay
that's
a little extra to be a background character or even a villain?
right. Mhm.
um Ongoing, this is a great conversation, Bob says, about building an audience and how to strategize. He has a lot of friend support and feels the pressure to get the book done. Yeah, the pressure is real. And it's interesting, like this is advice that has been given to me and I've ignored it much to my own chagrin, right? Which is go to a crowdfunding campaign with your project finished, you
Mhm.
know, because there's going to be so much involved that
Mhm.
if it's not finished, you're going to take a long time finishing it
Mhm.
while trying to do everything else. So volume 1 was completed. Lucy
Mhm.
Veloz and my
Mhm.
current project was completed. Volume 2, which was the big campaign I ran at the beginning of this year, I thought I would complete during the campaign, and I'm still working on that book. Comics take time, people.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think in a way, uh, deliberately putting yourself in a situation that holds you accountable is a strategy that can be very effective. So, if you feel like if I jump off the cliff and do a crowdfunding campaign and announce to all the people I know that I'm doing this and then they pay money to support me, it's going to help me reach the finish line. Then I think it's a good idea to do it. That's a totally valid reason.
Yeah, I mean, it just really sculpts, like, it for me, it sculpts my year. Like, I mean,
Mhm,
the aside being the summer dalliance of
mhm,
these, crowdfunding crucible and these campaigns, right? But like I said, an opportunity that couldn't be turned down. But still, like, the rest of my year is framed around these projects, and there's
mhm,
something kind of clarifying about that, right? Like, I don't
mhm.
have to go and hustle and look for my next project. I know I have a list of things to do. I just have to come to the computer monitor and, get them done.
So we have all these fantastic comments, but then we also had that other question that Roger had, which was about how people decided on what to put in their tier levels for support, which I think is such an interesting technical question. Like maybe we could start off, Patrick, just with you. What are the tier levels that you have for your Lucy Veloz project?
So I kept it really constrained. So the first thing I'm going to do, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take a moment
Okay.
to share this video since we're on the subject. So I was supposed to, like, press the button that changed the link at the bottom, right?
Hmm.
Like, good advertising
Hmm.
thing would have had the video with the little
Hmm.
ticker, but
Hmm.
this is live. I can't do it all, so I'm trying here, folks. It's a high wire act. Um, but so yeah, so in terms of like how you build a campaign, right? Like for Lucid Veloz, I kept it super, super simple, right? It's a chapter book. There's a soft cover version and there's a hardcover version, right? The soft cover version is about 66 pages. The hardcover version is going to be about 80 pages, right? And it'll be like additional back matter
Hmm.
and like extra stuff, like
Hmm.
how artwork was created. The
Hmm.
thing that I figured out is that regardless of the size of, regardless of whether a backer got the hardcover or the soft cover, shipping would be the same because of the size of the book in relationship to the packaging. So it became this weird kind of interesting sweet spot in that if you want to pay, you know, $20 or less, you can get the soft cover. If you're willing to pay $20 or more, you can get the hardcover, right? And shipping would still be about the same. And then added to that, I added if you want the ebook, that's just $5 for the PDF, right? And then I added stickers, stuff from my that I already have, and
Hmm.
then books from my back catalog, my other
Mhm,
books. And then I priced those out, added a little extra for shipping.
mhm,
So my key thing was to keep it all flat and shippable so that it could all fit in the same packaging that I've been using
mhm,
for everything.
mhm,
Um, and then that's it, like keeping the options minimum. When I ran my first crowdfunding campaign, I had a reward tier for everything. so many different reward tiers, and it was just like monstrous how many. Like, I'm not great with spreadsheets, and that spreadsheet almost ate me alive because it was just like all these different, extra. You want an extra copy? Do you want a signed copy? Do you want this book?
Mm.
Like too many things.
So
Whereas with
how many tiers did you have this time?
this time, it was well, I started with like four. Well, I started with
Mhm,
the hardcover, soft cover. I did like an early bird special and I raised the price, so that would be
mhm,
counted as four, right?
mhm,
And then I added um three more like premium perks, right? These
mhm,
weren't products. These
mhm,
were like variations on the crowdfunding crucible sort of
mhm,
project, right? I did like a coaching call sort of thing
mhm,
where they could send
mhm,
me something. I could like check
mhm,
out their design. We could talk about it. I'll send them a downloaded video, right?
mhm,
So I put aside about five of those. Three of them got snatched up for the call. I did a
mhm,
big ticket item, which would be like a one-on-one 5-week program, like as
mhm,
opposed to joining the crowdfunding crucible, just
mhm,
one-on-one with me. I'll help them
mhm,
get something done. I'll help them
mhm,
launch their campaign, whatever. So
mhm,
I made one of those available. And then I did like a kind of a compromise, which was like a combination of three calls, with some check-ins. And so these were things that you don't have to ship, right? These are things
mhm,
that are online perks, that were much higher premium, rather than
mhm.
$20, we're talking $88 for the online call, right? And which is cool because I got three folks that I'm gonna get to do that with, and that's gonna be a lot of fun to like
Wow.
really get
Mhm,
creative and like look at
mhm,
what they're working on and try
mhm,
and bring the strongest aspects of
mhm,
their project to the foreground. So
mhm,
that's something I've always enjoyed doing. So I'll be
mhm,
excited that and one of those backers showed up, like I said, on the day that the deadline was extended. So if that
mhm,
deadline hadn't been extended,
mhm,
it'd be a very different scenario.
mhm. But can people still support you? They can, right? Even
Well, my campaign is still running. It's down to the last 30 some odd. Well, let's
and then
check.
what'll happen after those 30 hours? Are people gonna be able to still purchase it if they want to or no?
I think my plan is gonna be to I would have the option to allow folks to continue buying, but I think I'm
Mhm,
gonna pause that so
mhm,
that I can get an accurate count of like the orders, right? How many
mhm,
people want soft covers, how many people want hard covers,
mhm,
and then I'll send that order out. But then such things as like those coaching calls, I think can remain available. I'll probably shut them down. Here they are:
mhm,
the coaching
mhm,
consult, the creative
mhm,
consult, and the creative crucible. Right.
mhm,
So I'll turn those off when the campaign ends,
mhm,
and then I'll focus on those folks for that window of time. And then once that's all resolved, then thanks to crowdfunders perks, right? I could turn that page back on and make it available like as an online store without having to do like the deadline and the countdown.
mhm.
So we've got a whole bunch more comments. Let's share a few. So Chris Magnus Art says, set a schedule for yourself. That's what I do with the artists he represents a variety of artists who are working in the industry and they're
Mhm,
getting things done. So folks, follow this advice. I need to follow it more myself. What else? Let's see what Roger has to say. For those who did a campaign, Roger would also be interested to hear if people would use crowdfunder again. I would personally. I've already got plans for how I would use it. I think it's definitely requires a different mindset.
Oh, Patrick. Oh, yes. Goodbye, Desi. Um, Patrick, I'm so curious because you have done campaigns both on Kickstarter and on Crowdfunder. So yeah, I am actually really curious if you could give more details about why you said you would definitely do another campaign with Crowdfunder.
Well, primarily that flexibility and the
Mhm,
hands-onness. Like
mhm,
with Kickstarter, it's like going to Comic-Con. You're going to
mhm,
this place. You've
mhm,
gotta meet the specific criteria. And there's a lot, there's an industry now that's focused
mhm.
on that too, right? So
Yeah.
if you want, you can have professionals come in and build your campaign for you, promote your campaign for you, and it's all like dialed into how Kickstarter does things.
Mhm,
So they're like the useful hacks are
mhm,
oriented towards how Kickstarter does things. And then there's like what they call Kickstarter magic, right? Because there's so
mhm,
much activity, and there's so much activity specific for comics, right?
mhm,
That just by being on Kickstarter, you're gonna grow your audience because there's gonna be like a certain section of people who are already on Kickstarter. They're regularly like cruising around shopping
mhm,
on Kickstarter, and then they're they're like acclimated to following other people, right? Like there
mhm,
are other people who make a habit of supporting campaigns on a regular basis. And if you are also support campaigns, you can kind of follow certain people and you'll
mhm,
get updates as to like, oh, so and so backed this campaign. And then you can check that, right? So that
mhm,
works in your favor for Kickstarter. But still, Kickstarter takes about 10%, broadly
mhm,
speaking. That's a pretty large chunk. So even though you might go past your initial goal, you know, it's kind of like a sobering experience to like look at your Kickstarter campaign and say, I made $5,000. And then, when that money comes, there's a 10% chunk that's been peeled
mhm,
off,
mhm,
right? Crowdfunder has a very different model, so they can get, depending on the specifics of how you want to crowdfund your campaign, you can get that number down to about 1.5%,
mhm,
right? So that includes like credit card fees, all that
mhm,
stuff goes
mhm.
down. So you end up with a whole lot more of what you raise in your
Yeah,
pocket.
that's amazing.
And then added to that, you're not constricted to like the specific timetable that Kickstarter has. You
Mhm,
could say, okay, now now it's time to fund, right? You can
mhm,
decide yourself when
mhm,
it's time for the money to come in, and
mhm,
then it's got a variety of platforms for that money.
mhm.
I'm very quickly scanning. So here's a quick broad question that we've had in the pocket. How does one go about finding an agent for a children's book or comic?
So before I answer that, Patrick, could you put Bob's comment up, the one that says, "Don't forget to remind everyone to like this video and hit this
Yes, let's get
subscribe."
that. Let's take care of business. Don't forget to remind everyone to give a like of this video and hit subscribe. And what do they say? They say ring that bell, right, for
Uh-huh.
notifications. So yes,
All right, so now
we've
we can
kind of
go
hit
back.
a record. Well, I should just say we hit a record in terms of views. So this is a big party compared to our previous
Yay,
live
okay.
streams.
So
But
now we can talk about Chris's question, yeah. How does
yes,
one
let's.
go about finding an agent for a children's book or comic? Um, I think community, community, community. Sort of like exactly what we've been saying all along related to crowdfunding does apply for finding an agent for your children's book or comic as well. I think um, joining various organizations, whether it's Kids Comics Unite or Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. So you get to meet your peers, and maybe you have opportunities to sign up for workshops with people in the industry. Um, and going to shows is another way to meet people, exhibiting at small press expos or local book festivals. I mean, there are certain shows that I think editors and agents tend to attend more than others. The ones that are in New York and LA, the biggest shows, also Toronto Comic Arts Festival. Those are the ones that industry heavyweights go to the most. Um, what do you think, Patrick? Have I sort of answered that question?
Oh, dazzlingly. And here's a follow-up by Sam Julian, who asks, how do agents feel about crowdfunding, and how does it impact subsequent publisher submissions?
I think people are open to crowdfunding. Everybody in the industry, I think, unless you have your head in the sand, you must know that crowdfunding is just becoming bigger and bigger. And there are some creators who have so much success with crowdfunding that why would they even want to work with a major publisher? That's a really good question. So I do think that there are agents and editors who pay attention to platforms like Kickstarter and are definitely looking for talent there. In terms of how it impacts publisher submissions, it's a really complicated question and it's case by case. You know, if you self publish and your book is a modest success, publishers are not really going to be interested. If you self publish and you're a huge success, then publishers are going to be interested. That's basically, I guess, the rule of thumb.
Pretty much, we have so many comics. So yes, joining a writing community was a game changer. Here's some more info from Roger, right? To be honest, on Crowdfunder, he actually changed his end goal mid-campaign because he knew he wouldn't be able to reach that goal, right? That's something you can't do on
Yeah.
Kickstarter. So
Yeah.
that
That's
adaptability is key. We have I've been trying to, let's see, I added some stars to a few so we could try and tackle a few of these others. Lisa's wondering about the crowdfunder spotlight, right? Love the energy, but would have loved to donate to the KCU members campaigns, but couldn't do them all at the same time, financially speaking. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I think that's the case always. It reminds me of when I go to a festival like SPX or Mocha or something like that, and I see so many talented creators, but I only have my spending money, which is always limited, like of what I can spend at a show. So I can't buy everything. But a lot of times I will, if there's somebody I see and I just think, oh wow, I want to remember them, I'll try to take a postcard or take a picture of their booth or something like that so I remember them. So I do feel that as a creator, just putting yourself out there, even if somebody doesn't initially cross the line and hand you cash, it's just always such a good thing because it takes repeated exposure and it's a slow build, but it's still beneficial if somebody sees your work and they like it and they can't support it in the moment, but they might see it a year down the road and at that time they can support it.
Yeah, the mantra that I usually go with is that support is as simple as a share. It's not always just about clicking the buy button, right? Like sometimes that retweet or like posting it on your own blog or featuring it on your own newsletter or just saying, hey, can I write about you on a blog post? Like any of these, there's so many other ways to like express that support. And Bonnie wants to know, will Crowdfunder bring new readers, or is it more about word of mouth from your readers to share the product, which means they have to love it as much or more than you alone?
Well, I mean, I guess the way I would answer that is I feel like Crowdfunder is trying to do that by having these spotlight events. That's the whole reason I think why they're hosting spotlight events so they can bring a bunch of people together who are focused on a specific category. And so if you're a kids comics fan and you go to support your friend like Desi and John, for example, and then you notice, oh, there's this whole wall of other kids comics campaigns going on, there's a chance you might end up supporting somebody else. But because crowdfunder isn't nearly as big as Kickstarter, they can't, just at the stage that they're at, they can't offer the same kind of general crowd support that you could get on Kickstarter, I think. What do you think, Patrick?
Yeah, I mean, that's like Kickstarter has the advantage of Kickstarter you will more likely get a larger audience, but there are many more restrictions to like what will succeed on Kickstarter, right? What's very popular right now on Kickstarter since post-pandemic has been NSFW comics, right? So great for adult readers, great for, filling in a specific niche in the readership, but conversely, kids comics does not do very well on Kickstarter
Mhm, mhm,
because most people on Kickstarter are buying comics for themselves,
mhm,
right? And so if you're trying to sell a comic, for a young
mhm,
reader, right,
mhm,
they're not. It's less likely that they're going to be on a crowdfunding campaign on a crowdfunding platform.
mhm,
So you kind of have to target the cool aunts and uncles, if not the
mhm,
parents
mhm.
directly.
Yeah, but that just makes me think, sort of going off on a tangent, that another benefit of doing a crowdfunding campaign for your kids' comic is that once you have that hard copy of your book, you can then go out to local schools and libraries and offer to do an event. Because to be honest, most people out there don't differentiate in the least between a book that's been published by Penguin Random House and a book that you self-published through Ingram Spark or something like that. They're gonna look at it and be like, "Oh, it's a book." They don't think about, that those things. So I just think it's a calling card in a way for getting yourself out into the community, and then you can start building that wider exposure.
And so Chris asks, what is the measurement of huge success for those publishers that we were just mentioning?
Yeah, I think for I could never give an exact number, but tens or hundreds of thousands of supporters and dollars.
Yeah, or along those lines, right? Maybe some headlines, some snappy headlines, right? Like there
Mhm,
there have been a few that talk about, what a Keanu Reeves comic, being
mhm,
record breaking. And there's only
mhm,
one Keanu Reeves, but
mhm,
like something like that, that's why I think you see a lot of especially on Kickstarter, you see a lot of graphics that say funded overnight,
mhm,
funded in 12 hours, right?
mhm,
These social proofs
mhm,
help tip the balance for those people who are hovering over the buy button.
mhm.
So 100% putting yourself out there. That's what we've been doing for the past. How can you believe an hour has passed like that, Janna? And
Yeah.
I had all these videos lined up and we've only played one. So let's say I play a quick little 30-second update from one of our backers uh, to just let folks know where things are at.
Hello, Cicada fans, and thank you for funding the first 30 pages of Cicada Apocalypse. Digital copies have been sent to people's inboxes as well as their 3D models, and we're excited to move forward with our next venture in October when we start pre-ordering the books. Exciting! Here's a sneak preview of the actual art that you can order in part of that next crowdfunding effort, as well as some of these sneak 30 pages. We're excited to bring that to you in October, so stay tuned. Thanks again.
Wow,
Good job.
congratulations,
So
Roger.
yeah, so one thing I was really trying to instill in the Crucible, right, was maneuverability, right? Because over the
Mhm,
course of those 30-day campaigns, all sorts of crazy things can happen, right? And so you had to be able to like turn around and make yourself available for a radio interview or something. And so I don't want to say that I planned, to make a last minute request, but it's kind of cool that I didn't put out a last minute request. And there were a couple of people who really jumped on it. And it's that kind of hustle that
mhm,
thrives on crowdfunding. So
mhm.
here's another short update from another successful backer.
Hey, Ricky, can you believe how great our crowdfunder did? People must really like us. It sure is amazing. Our awesome supporters helped us meet all our goals, even Comic-Con! Yay! I love comics! So, what are we going to do with all this? I mean, what comes next? Well, I have to polish the scripts, and I get to finish the illustrations. And when everything's just right, we'll send our work to the printer. That's where our stories and drawings will become real books, paperback and hardcover. Whee! I can't wait! Our Baffling Birds crowdfunder campaign is a success. Thanks to your generous support, Our trilogy of nature mysteries and our Nikki and Ricky science workbook will be published as ebooks and paperbacks. We're even able to offer a special hardcover edition, collecting all 3 Nikki and Ricky adventures in one gift-worthy volume. Our books are scheduled to launch December 5th, just in time for the holidays. In the meantime, we've turned our crowdfunder page into a bookshop where all our books are currently available for pre-order. Join the adventure as Nikki and Ricky investigate the mystery of the shell tree, the hummingbird conundrum, and the case of the duck's teeth. All 3 Nikki and Ricky stories feature fun nature facts about the wild creatures our sibling sleuths encounter as they work together to solve each case. Ready to take your reading adventure to the next level? Use our interactive science workbook to solve a science mystery and make a comic of your own, with Nikki and Ricky as your guides. Want to know more about us and our books? We did a podcast with StoryComic.com. You can also read all about the origins of Nikki and Ricky and about Rowena and Sarah, the author-artist team working to bring them to life, in their article, Zero to Crowdfunded, the backstory of Nikki and Ricky at Kids Comics Unite. Don't forget, our launch day for the adventures of Nikki and Ricky Baffling Birds is December 5th. Pre-order your copy today.
And so those aren't even just like the variety of videos that like every person who was part of our, live stream spotlight provided, like of the 10, about 10 streams, everyone had something unique to offer, whether it was like live artwork or special videos or something, some presentations of their own. So each one was really unique and had a lot of value. People who came brought a lot to the table, Janna. It was really impressive.
Yeah. Wow.
So here's a few more.
That's a nice quote to put on the back cover.
Yeah, there you go. That's the thing. That's another thing, is that these live streams have been gold mines, and I've been encouraging folks to like review them, download them, snip them up, and put them out there, because they're like, the Amants had some great lessons that they shared, and I would hope that they download it and put it on their next newsletter,
Yeah. Is that the replay of that talk that they did? I'm trying to remember if they did that talk with Kids Comics Unite or Kids Comics Studio, the one where they talked about how they get everything done.
The art-life balance was one of the, I think it was one of the general workshops, right? Where it was a Kids Comics Studio, but you could also register.
Yeah, so maybe it's available in the replay section in Kids Comics Unite.
I believe so.
It was awesome.
Yeah. And speaking of workshops, this might be a good segue to mention where we're going next. Like one door closes, one door opens, right? We're finishing the live streams for now, but we have more in the works.
Yeah, so tomorrow there is a workshop with Shauna Grant, who is the author of the Mimi early reader graphic novel series, and she also did a history comics graphic novel with First Second that was about Rosa Parks and Claudette Colvin. And she's going to be talking about how to use 3-act structure in your storytelling in comics. And that is tomorrow at 12:30. And you can still sign up for that if you haven't signed up for that workshop. And then this fall is our big Pitchapalooza extravaganza. Oh, there's Shauna. Yep, right there. So do you have a, I'll just let you scroll there.
Yeah, we'll just leave that. So we have that, so you can register. That's tomorrow. In fact, I have a little something here I could also add to that while we're on the subject.
Okay.
While I quickly look for the right button to press.
Yeah, okay. So, hi everybody. I'm Shauna J. Grant, and Mimi and the Cutie Catastrophe is an early reader's graphic novel. So, it's perfect for kids aged 6 to 8 as like their first time like reading independently and getting into comics. And it's about a little girl named Mimi who wants to prove that she's more than just cute because she's feeling like a little bit pushed aside because everyone is like, oh, you're too cute to get dirty, or you're too cute to like help with this stuff. And so she goes with the help of her magical talking toy dog Penelope. She tries out a lot of different outfits and personas to find something to show people like, see, like I'm more than just cute. And it's a story about being true to yourself.
Aw, that's so great, Patrick.
And so I've also included the link in the comments below. So anyone who hasn't already signed up for it really ought to give it a check it out. It's one of the great things that we do at Kids Comics Unite. I dare say we.
Yes, and then should I do the whole spiel about Pitchapalooza this fall? Do you have a graphic for that?
Alas, I do not. I could
Oh.
scramble and find one.
Okay, well, just for everybody who's still here, I don't know who's still listening to the live stream, but we are doing a major Pitchapalooza extravaganza this fall. We're collaborating with Kidlit GN, another kids graphic novel community organization. We have two different events that you can participate in to pitch your work to editors and agents. And we are doing a pitching workshop that is going to be on September 9th, where we go in depth on how to develop a pitch to submit to editors and agents. Yes. Okay, Patrick, you got it. So September 6th is a free info session where we're going to talk about the whole landscape of events coming up in the fall and what's required for each of them. And then September 9th is a paid workshop where we are teaching and going really in depth on how to develop a pitch. And then I think it's October 4th, might be. Oh no, October 1st to 6th is the Kidlit graphic novel pitch event, which is happening on their website. And then KCU's Pitch Fest competition is happening. Submissions are open starting on October 10th. That's when you can start submitting your work. And we'll be announcing the winners on November 4th. And we have an amazing jury of editors and agents who are going to be looking at everybody's work. So if you want your work to get seen by that list of people you see right there, definitely consider giving it a shot.
That's awesome. Great pitch, Janna.
Thanks, Patrick.
The rock star of Pitchapalooza right here.
Yep.
Well, we are at the 1 hour and 18-minute mark. We still have a dozen people joining us, KCU members all, I'm sure. But hopefully maybe there's a few new friends that have stuck it out throughout this whole thing. It's been a lot of fun for me, Janna.
Yeah, it's been so much fun. Patrick, you're the best.
You're too kind. So I've played most of pretty much all the videos that I wanted to play. I had extras in case we ran out of things to say, but the conversation was so
well, I don't think you and I would ever run out of things to say.
I know. I just can't wait until we're doing that, across from a table,
Yeah. And so maybe, the last thing I should have mentioned, Patrick, maybe is crowdfunder again next year, maybe?
Could be fun. I'm sure I'll have something I've been working on. So yeah, I think that could be fun. It'd be worth doing. We'll have to hear back. We'll have to get in touch with the other part of that trifecta, right?
Mm-hmm.
Crowd. But I've always got ideas for like a pitch fest yearbook kind of thing. There's so many possibilities.
Yep.
Thanks, Roger, for being a part of things. This is all the thank yous are rolling in.
Yeah. Ah, it's great to see. Thanks everybody for sticking with us.
Yeah, this has been great. Thank you, Janna, for taking the time. I know you're so busy, so I hope you were
Alrighty.
able to linger without too much negative impact on your schedule.
I just have to go make dinner now.
Oh, okay. High stakes.
Yep.
Well, I think that's it. I think what I have here is our little outro video that we usually end our streams on, but I want to make sure everyone's had a chance to say their farewells before I press our last our outro. That was it. That was too fast for me to do anything impressive. So normally I have things set up with an outro and a few other buttons, but you know, that's my argument for having multiple arms, but that's another subject.
Yes. Okay.
All right, so we'll just end this with a farewell. Thanks for stopping by, all. See you
Yep.
tomorrow.
Yep. See you tomorrow.